Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Courtney Ryan, and today we're going to be reacting to a TikTok video. So we're going to watch this together all the way through and then reconvene, and we're going to talk about it, and I'll tell you what I think. So this video is from a TikTok creator with the username Avery_Henderson76, and I will link that down below in the description if you guys want to go watch her original video. And the little text that she has on the screen says, "Have any other single girls had this experience?" So let's give it a watch.
So I'm on a date right now, and have men just lost the ability to ask questions? Like, I have asked this man probably 30 to 40 questions in the entire time span that we've been on this date. He has not asked me one. I know every single thing there is to know about him. He has not asked me a single question. I'm literally in the bathroom right now, I'm fully stalling because I just don't want to be here anymore. But what is going on? Why do men have the full inability to not ask women questions about themselves? What? It's crazy. And he's older too. He's in his 30s, and it's come on, babe.
Now, this is not the first video that I've seen about this topic. Actually, I follow a girl named Tinks, and she posted a video about this, I would say a couple months ago at this point. So I knew that I wanted to cover this topic eventually because I've seen a lot of other women talk about this on TikTok specifically. Now, I obviously have some thoughts about this per usual, but I would actually really value your input down in the comments from a male point of view if you're a man watching. If you're a woman, I would love to hear your experience as well. But since I'm going to be offering a woman's perspective here as someone who makes content for men, I would love to hear from the men who are watching down in the comments of what you think and what your experience has been as a man. So essentially she said, why do men have the full inability to ask women questions about themselves? And just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of a few possible answers to this question. I'm going to start with the most mild and sort of work my way up to the worst case scenario answers. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses, but rather try to think of all the answers from both sides and provide solutions for each point. I don't think it's always a malicious thing or automatically means that the guy is awful, the way so many people on TikTok pan it out to be. That's certainly a possibility too, which I'll discuss, but I don't think that's what's always going on, so I want to cover some different things. I think one answer to this revolves around communication skills, the increase in isolation and lack of human connection that so many of us are experiencing, and it's just continuing to get worse, to be honest. I think communication skills are one of those things for a lot of people that need to sort of be worked on and practiced. It doesn't always just come naturally to everyone. Something that would go hand in hand with this would also be nervousness or anxiety, a sort of social anxiety. I know a lot of men who have commented on my channel before have expressed this feeling of anxiety or social anxiety, not just with women, but I think in social situations in general. And again, I do think that this is something that is continuing to get worse as we move towards isolation and move further away from community and human-to-human interactions. I think a solution here for a lot of people would be to be really honest with yourself and make sure that you are not isolating yourself and you're not being a hermit. I know it is so easy to fall into the trap of doing this. Trust me, I get it too. I'm an introvert and a homebody, and I have a tendency to isolate myself, but I do notice the more that I do this and the longer I let it go on, the more I struggle in social situations. So I think it's so important to put yourself in situations where you have to talk to people, say hi to people, practice your conversation skills in real life. It is a muscle that you have to work out, and if you go too long without doing so, it can absolutely get weaker, just like the muscles in your legs, right? If you skip the gym. I've done a few videos on conversations, first date questions, and some other related topics that I'll link below for you, but I don't want you to overthink or script out what you're going to say. I know it might seem like it'll help, but I think for a lot of people, this actually makes it much harder for you, and you're going to come across inauthentic and stiff and come across even more nervous than maybe you would have done if you hadn't prepped so much. So they're just to give you some ideas, some things to think about, but I don't want you to ruminate on them or let them be sort of self-destructive behaviors. And I actually asked my husband, why do you think men struggle to ask women questions on dates or don't ask women questions on dates? And his first answer that he said without even thinking was nervousness. And again, I think this is something that is far more common than we realize. It's something that I think we can give people a little bit of grace for. Not all of us are incredibly extroverted or thrive in social situations, so I think we can give people a little bit of grace when it comes to this, but I also think that this is something that you just have to work on. But two things can be true at once, and I do think this is something that you have to actively work on and try to get better at. So just in your everyday life, try to say hi to people, smile at people, order from an actual human instead of a machine or something like that. That way you actually have to have that human interaction, and you can practice in your everyday life with small things that might not make you as nervous, so that when you get in situations that would typically make you more nervous, you're gonna feel a little bit better. But to wrap this answer up, nervousness, anxiety, social anxiety, isolation, I think these are all contributing to many of the issues that we're seeing in dating, but one being conversation skills and asking questions. Now, I think another answer here could be a focus on impressing your date rather than actually connecting with them. I think we consistently tell men that their worth is pretty dependent on what they can provide transactionally, so it might make sense why they feel this need to talk themselves up, talk about themselves, or try to impress you rather than creating a two-way dialogue. From a woman's perspective here, I think when a woman goes on a date, she will leave thinking it went well if she feels comfortable with you, if she feels safe with you. I think these are two things that women really need and value when they're on a date with you. Whereas from a man's perspective, they're not going into the date thinking, do I feel safe around this woman? Does she make me feel comfortable? They're probably thinking, well, now that I've got her on this date, I have to make sure that she likes me. I have to impress her. I think this is a cultural or societal conditioning problem where we just have sort of different objectives when we go out on a date, or different desires, needs, wants. So what is the solution here? I think a solution could be understanding that this is clearly not the way to approach it and not how to impress a woman. What is actually impressive is connecting and being genuinely curious about the person that you're on a date with to see if you're compatible. It's to make them feel comfortable and safe and connect with them to see if you're compatible. You can't possibly know if you're compatible if you spend the whole date talking about yourself and you don't get to know the other person at all. But my point with this one is I think a lot of men feel this need to talk about themselves or to sort of sell themselves the way they would in an interview, list off all their accomplishments, how much money they make, what their job title is, all the cool things that they do, what their lifestyle is like, and just continue to sort of hype up their lifestyle to you or talk about themselves and present themselves in a way to you that would make you like them more, because they might tie their own personal value to these things and feel that maybe they need to provide something for you or add value to your life. So they might spend the whole date talking about themselves, trying to impress you instead of actually connecting with you, which is not the move. And from a woman's perspective, is not what impresses a woman at all. I think genuine curiosity, active listening, communicating, that really is what impresses a woman on a first date, and trying to get to know her to see if you guys are compatible and trying to connect with each other. The next answer could be as simple as a cultural conditioning and sort of a confusion around this. I think we often expect men to take the lead, but I think some men might really struggle with this when it comes to a date or a conversation. It's important to have a sort of balanced assertiveness with dating and making sure that you're still showing a genuine interest in the person that you're on a date with and be able to have an engaging conversation. I think a solution here, or something that could really help, would be following a sort of equal sharing type rule. So guys, if a girl asks you a question and you give your answer, at the end of your answer, ask her the same thing back. This is such an easy way to keep the conversation flowing and really get to know her. You're asking the same thing that she asked you. Now on to the more unfortunate answer here. Maybe the guy that you're on a date with simply just might not care about you, about what you have to say, about your opinions. And in this case, I would say definitely do not go on a second date with this man. There are guys who simply have a ton of options in women. There are guys who are straight up not boyfriend or husband material, and guys who genuinely just do not care about you. Unfortunately, that's just the reality. I'm not saying that all men are like that, but I think a lot of these men who a lot of women want, who are probably getting more dates with women, might just not care about you. They might not be great guys. Maybe their bank account looks great, maybe they look great on the outside, maybe their height is great, but when it comes to what is inside, they're probably not so hot. So I think as a collective, we really need to start prioritizing different things when it comes to dating, because what we're doing currently is not working, or it doesn't seem to be working. If you're choosing people based on exceptionally poor criteria, the date is probably going to reflect that. The relationship with this person is probably going to reflect that. And honestly, I think the solution here is just don't date guys like this. And if you're someone who consistently finds yourself attracted to this same type of guy who isn't asking you questions, who doesn't care about you, who doesn't care about your opinions or what you have to say, or just doesn't really care about getting to know you at all, and maybe he's narcissistic. I hate to say that because I know it's a buzzword, but there are people out there who are narcissistic and tend to only talk about themselves. They're very self-centered and they just might not care about you. But if you find yourself consistently attracted to this type of person over and over again, maybe it's a different guy, but he acts the same, he treats you the same, I would so recommend getting to the root of why you are attracted to this. There is always a reason and usually some healing that needs to be done to get to the root of why you are attracted to men who treat you like that. And by no means am I saying that it's all a woman's fault. I think the men who are doing that also need to get to the root of why they are operating that way and why they are treating people poorly. But we can't control what other people do. We can only control what we do as an individual. That includes who you're dating and choosing to be with. The person that you choose to be with is often a direct reflection of your emotional development. And if that doesn't humble you and really make you think about why you're making the choices that you're making, I don't really know what will. Now, I do also think it's pretty easy to tell which category the guy that you're on a date with falls into just based on how they're speaking to you. You know, a guy who is not asking you questions because he's nervous is probably going to be acting much different than the guy who is a certified F-boy player who doesn't care about you. Like, I think it's usually pretty obvious to tell the difference. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's always been my experience. It's always very obvious when a guy is one category or the other. So use your best judgment. I have a few other little things to cover here. One being that I've had a lot of men leave comments on my videos or send me messages or whatever it is saying that they've had the same experience but sort of opposite. So they go on a date with a woman and they feel like the woman is giving them absolutely nothing. She's saying one-word answers. She's not asking him any questions and he's asking her questions the entire time, but she's giving him sort of one-word nothing responses. So then he might feel more of a need to do the heavy lifting and do more of the talking and might end up talking more about himself for that reason because the woman he's on a date with is giving him nothing to go off of, right? So what is he supposed to do? Just keep rapid firing questions at her to get one-word responses? I have to think that if I was on a date now and it wasn't going well or it was going so tragic that they were only saying one thing back to me or weren't asking me any questions, I would just look at them honestly and say, it's been great getting to know you. You have not said hardly anything to me. You have not asked me any questions. I don't feel like we're getting to know each other and I don't feel like this conversation is productive. Great to meet you. Don't see this going anywhere. It just seems like such a waste of time to go on a date with someone like that. So you don't want to be that person on either side. You don't want to be the one who is contributing nothing to the conversation, who's giving no responses, but you also don't want to be the person who is talking nonstop about themselves and not asking the other person any questions. So again, as I mentioned, I think following that equal sharing rule can be really helpful. If you're stumped on sort of what to ask the person next, just ask you what they already asked you. Because you want to sort of get to know each other on the same level, and this will help you flow through the conversation more naturally and get to know each other gradually as time goes on. Now, this also makes me think of something really interesting that I watched a while ago, where guys were speed dating women. I think it was some sort of like blind speed dating video where they couldn't see the girl that they were talking to. They were like facing behind each other or something. And whenever the guy in the video spent most of the time talking about himself, he walked away from that thinking that it went really well and he liked the girl that he was talking to. Now, I haven't looked into this at all or why this could be happening on a psychology type level, but I would love to hear a guy's perspective on this down in the comments. When you go on a date with a girl or you talk to a girl, what makes you leave that interaction feeling like it went really well? Because in that video specifically, it was when the guy spent most of the time talking about himself. And like didn't really find out anything about the girl, but was just talking about himself. I just think it's really interesting, and I think this might be a big difference between men and women. I know a lot of us like to talk about ourselves, but I have to think if I spent an entire date just talking about myself, I would walk away thinking, I didn't even get to know him at all. I actually don't know if we're compatible at all because I talked about myself the whole time and I don't know a thing about him. So let me know from a male point of view why that is the case, if you agree with that, if you disagree with that, what your experience has been. I'm just fascinated by this topic. And again, I think this is a huge problem with dating now where we have one of the people not asking the other person any questions, or we're just really struggling with communication in general on a collective level. So this is something that I would love to keep talking about, and I would love to help you if you have any questions for me down in the comments. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I've seen a couple videos about this topic at this point. Tinks had made a TikTok about this a while ago, and I knew that I wanted to cover it because I do think that it is such a big problem. I know a lot of men are experiencing this too, so I would just love to hear from you guys down in the comments. I think there are multiple things that are happening here. I don't think the answer is black or white, clearly. But I think bottom line, we could all use some work on our conversation skills. And regardless of the answer that might resonate with you after watching this video, you need to be asking women questions on dates and not just talk about yourself the entire time. And the same is true for women. They should be asking you questions and trying to get to know you as well. So I hope you at least take that point away from this video. Ask each other questions. The next date that you go on, remember that you watched this video from Courtney Ryan that told you she's actually not going to be impressed if I just talk about myself the entire time and I don't ask her anything. So let me make sure that I'm asking her questions. Maybe I'm feeling really nervous. Maybe I'm feeling anxious, but I want to get to know this girl that I'm on a date with. I'm genuinely interested in her. I want to see if we're compatible, and I'm going to ask her questions to get to know that. I don't need to go into the date thinking I have to get this girl to like me. I have to list off every accomplishment I've ever had in my entire life. I won the spelling bee in 6th grade. Maybe that will really impress her. Chill out, take a step back, take some deep breaths. And remember, just ask her questions like a human being, like a friend that you would like to get to know, to see if you want to hang out with them again. Just really try to simplify it in your brain. I can do more videos about this if you guys would find it helpful. If you like this video or found it helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to be in the loop for when I release new content. If you haven't already, be sure to follow me over on Instagram at Courtney Christine Ryan. I love connecting with all of you guys over on there as well. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.